Hello and welcome to Therapy Business School. This channel is for students of therapy and those already qualified to help give you some tips and some tricks and some ideas for your own work with your own clients. My name is James Taylor. I'm an online counsellor, hypnotherapist, life coach. I'm also a hypnotherapy supervisor. I'm also a podcaster, a YouTuber and an author. So, forgiveness, it's a huge concept in therapy, and I'm going to share a personal story from my own background as well to help demonstrate this. Alright, so just bear with me and I hope that's okay. Now, forgiveness, this can be so difficult and it's got to be timed right, and you as the therapist will have to gauge when is the right time to even approach the thought or the concept of forgiveness with your clients. Too soon and it can burn bridges. At the right time it can build bridges, and personally I'm a massive fan of building bridges as opposed to burning them. So let me share the true story with you first of all. For those who have been regular watchers of this YouTube channel, you might know that in a previous career of mine I was a detective in the Metropolitan Police. Did that for about 22 years. Now I remember there was an inspector who was atrocious. He was a really bad inspector, and he didn't trust people, and he thought he had great communication skills, and he highly regarded himself but wasn't highly regarded by others around him, the staff. Now he did something to me in particular which I don't feel it's appropriate to go into, but I believed it was out of order, and I got the union involved, which is called the Police Federation in that world, and I was speaking to the Federation about it, about possibly putting a complaint in against this inspector. Now while this was going on, he was still my inspector and I had to work for him, and he knew that I was upset with him, and I'm guessing that he was upset with me because of the way he behaved. So cut a very long story short, every time he come into the office, I remember the tension building up in myself. He'd come over and he'd walk over, how are you, how are you, how are you, this kind of thing like this. And I used to say, fine, and I wasn't fine. I wasn't fine at all. But one day I had to go and get a form signed by him. He had to authorise something that I was trying to do as part of my daily job. And I was thinking, I've got to walk into his office, ask him permission to sign this form so I can do my job. I've got to ask him for something. That was the concept behind it. And I really wasn't looking forward to it at all. But when I walked into the office, I said, can you sign this for me? He said, what is it? I said, I explained what the form was for. He said, let me have a look at it. And as he was going through this form to make sure all the boxes were filled out correctly, and I got the impression he was being a little bit overzealous and flexing his muscles in this kind of way, but a feeling just came over me. Now at the time I was already training to be a counsellor, and about exploring your feelings, identifying feelings within yourself, going down the deep end of the thinking pool, even if it's difficult, going down there to figure things out. And something happened, very, very peculiar and unexpected. As he was going over the form, I decided in that moment to forgive him. Truly to forgive him. No strings attached. And when he signed the form and handed it back to me, like this kind of thing. And I said to him, I've been thinking about making a complaint against you. He said, yes. I said, although I don't agree with what you did, I'm not going to carry on making the complaint. And I forgive you. There was a moment of silence. And then the armour dropped for him. And he said, it has been difficult and the stresses of my job. And honestly, he started talking about something. And if someone offered me £1 million to remember what he said, I wouldn't be able to claim it. Because he started talking and I was just with my own thoughts in that moment. Because I didn't forgive him to forgive him and release him from it. I forgave him to release me from it. And a different version of me walked out of that office than the version that had walked in. Totally unexpected, wasn't planned, and it took me by surprise. But after that, the environment in the office got better and things got easier. He was still the way he was, but I felt I gained more control over myself because I'd released myself from it. Does that make sense? So when you're working with a client in therapy and the concept of forgiveness comes up, it's powerful, and it might be worth exploring the elements of the forgiveness. What I would encourage hugely is that if a client is going to do this forgiveness thing, and I'll talk through an example of how to do it in a moment, it's done, no strings attached. If you're going to let go, let go. If I go and roll around in the mud, and I get in, and I'm literally covered from head to toe, and I get in the shower and wash all of me except one arm, I'm not clean. For me to be truly clean, I've got to wash this arm as well. So it's got to be a no strings attached. Now, let's say the forgiveness is towards another person. The client is to potentially forgive another person. Now, this can be any other person in their life. Parent, friend, brother, sister, colleague, boss, whatever it might be. Here's a concept to help them with it. And you might have to lead a little bit here. The concept is to get the client to write out why they are forgiving that other person. Now, that does not mean they're condoning the other person's behaviour. It does not mean that they're going along and it was okay, really. It's not about that. It's about forgiving another person, just like myself, to release themselves from the hold it has over them. Now, what's a really good technique to do is to get the client to write that other person a letter. Not a Word document, old-fashioned pen and paper. It's more impactful. Get them to write the other person a letter. Now, they can send it to them if they want to, but they don't have to. They can put the letter in a drawer when it's done. But what I've found, both personally and professionally, is encourage the client when they finish writing the letter, empty the tank with their feelings. It all goes in the letter. This is the no strings attached part. And when the clients finish writing the letter, when the moment's right, take it outside into the garden or somewhere safe and burn it. And as the letter turns to ash and smoke, let it go. As it drifts up, let it go. Again, no strings attached. It's so important, and it's so impactful as well. So that's one technique. If the forgiveness is towards another person for something that they've done to wrong this person here, okay? But what about if the client is critical of their younger selves for not managing a situation better, not being more articulate, not being as responsive as they should have been? You might find a client is overly critical of a younger version of themselves in the past that didn't handle something the way the present version thought or thinks they should have. That can be quite hard. So here's a concept for that. And openly discuss this with the client. Anyone who's a fan of this channel will know what I'm like with elephants. I like elephants. I love elephants. I just don't want one in the room with me. So consider this approach when working with your clients. It's to ask gentle questions about, the earlier version of you. What would you have liked them to have done instead? There's naming the elephants. You're getting the present version to talk about an earlier version of themselves that didn't deal with something the way the present version wanted. And you're getting the present version to verbalise what they think the earlier version should have done. Okay? Get them to really give you detail on this. Now, when this is done, ask the client, do you think that earlier version had the tools that you now have to be able to do those things? Or do you think maybe that earlier version of you was just doing the best they could with what they had at the time? What do you think? And go quiet. and let the client process that kind of question. Because often we will assign a role of guilt to an earlier version of ourselves, but this present version has got more tools. We know better because we've lived through it. We're wiser. We're more articulate. Maybe our boundaries are more in place. Now, quite often when I've done this with my own client work, a client can see that they're being quite judgmental to that earlier version of themselves. And really, when they've been criticising them and putting that earlier version down, really, maybe they should have been praising them for doing the best they could. And that can be quite a big change for a client to realise, accept, contemplate, think about, weigh up. It can be huge. So the role of forgiveness, or the art of forgiveness, is perhaps a better way of saying it, the art of forgiveness is not so you are linked to something else that out there or in your past. It's about cutting the ties from it. Because when you cut your ties from it, you're now free. And that can only be a good thing. What do you think? So, I hope this has been beneficial. If it has, please remember to give the like, the share and the subscribe. For those who haven't done so yet, I have a private Facebook group just for therapists, either qualified or student, and it's a really friendly place. So the link for that will be in the description below. I hope you're doing very well wherever you are. This is James, and this is Therapy Business School. Bye bye.